everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new here. Welcome back to my channel if you're a returning viewer or subscriber. In today's video, I'm going to be talking you through the 9 books that I got through in August. I had, I think, what was my most successful reading month so far, like in my entire reading career. Bearing in mind, I've been reading consistently since 2016, 2015, sometime around there. 1 year gap in the middle where I read like 7 books. But beyond that, I've been packing as many books as I can into each month, every single month for years, almost a decade now. So it's kind of crazy that this is my biggest reading month so far. But I'm so excited to talk through the 9 books I got to. I came out of a reading slump. I was in a very bad reading slump throughout July, and I think I was just so overjoyed to be out of that I just, was like gobbling up every single book I came across. The other thing is that I did my first ever 24-hour readathon video. I'll have that linked in the cards if you haven't seen it yet and you would like to. Reading as much as I could within a 24-hour period meant that I was actually kind of dedicating a lot of time to reading. So I think I got through 3 and a bit books in that alone, and then throughout the rest of the month, like I said, I was just having a really good time reading. I was in a really good place with it, which is the reason why I actually thought a 24-hour readathon would be a good idea. I think we should like throw everything aside and get into the video, because I think that this video is going to be a long one. It's the first book I read in the month of August, or it was one that I finished actually, because I've been in the middle of this for a long time, and that is Addicted for Now by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is it's the third book in the Addicted series. I've been having like kind of mixed results with this series. I think the first read was a 3-star. 3.5. Second one was a 3.5, and this one, or maybe it was a 3, I don't know. I've had like roughly, 3 or 3.5. This one is so far my least favourite in the series. And I was told this is the book that kind of like gets you really hooked into this series, because this is a long book series. It's like around 10 books. I don't know, it just felt so flat for me. I really didn't enjoy it. A big problem is that it's 550 pages or something like that. It just was like a slog. Nothing happened. There was no plot whatsoever. And I don't love our main characters, Lily and Lo. So this series follows Lily and Lo, like I said, and they are both addicts. Lily is addicted to sex and Lo is addicted to alcohol. They kind of fake date to enable each other's addictions, but the series is about them battling their addictions, coming to terms with them, but also wanting to love each other while they're going through the pain and to come out the other side healthier, both for themselves and for each other. It definitely improved towards the end. We got a lot more of the other side characters, they became like a much more prominent feature of the book, and I think that really helped, because obviously, I was reading about unlikable people doing unlikable things. So the second we had someone who I was actually kind of rooting for, I got a bit more invested. This brings me so much pleasure to say that the next book follows Rose and Connor. Rose is one of Lily's sisters. So the next book is not going to feature this couple in as much depth. I would be hugely surprised if I rated it as low as this book. But yeah, this was a 3-star overall. It honestly should have probably been about a 2.5. I think the ending really did kind of bring it up. But yeah, just a slog and like not an enjoyable one whatsoever. We're basically just seeing what we've seen throughout primarily book 1, but also parts of book 2. There was also a lot to do with Reid and Daisy. Daisy's another one of Lily's sisters, and she's in a relationship with this guy who is many years older than her. It's just icky at points. Some funny lines, some kind of like crazy moments. A lot of this book is actually about trying to track down this guy who's trying to tell the world that Lily is a sex addict, which would obviously like damn her family and whatever. So she is doing whatever she can to try and find this person. Lo's like out on the hunt. I just didn't really enjoy, I don't know, I just didn't like this book basically. In conclusion, not a fan. Such a shame, because this is actually a signed copy. I actually want to give away on Instagram, and I got a personalised signed copy. So to have this be my signed one, when I feel like it's going to be my least favourite in the entire series, is a little bit of a letdown, but it's fine. Moving on. Bigger, better things. I'm sure, like I said, that I'm going to enjoy at least like books 4, 5, perhaps 6 and 7, etc. more than this one. Only good things to come. Next up, I read Days in the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. This is a piece of Japanese translated fiction. I was really excited for this because I actually got given this for my birthday, so it was a book I kind of requested, or was on my wish list. My mum picked this up for me, and I really enjoyed my experience with this. I feel like this is the most like gentle-hearted, soft, quirky, fun little book. Super short, only like 200 pages. Actually, I think it was under 200. Yeah, 160 pages around there. I didn't plan on picking this up when I did. The TBR jar actually picked it for me, but I did find that this kind of came at a perfect time in my life, and I really enjoyed the experience of it. It felt very comforting and very cozy, but also kind of packed a bit of a punch. It had a bit of a message, which I really enjoyed as well. So in this book, we're following this girl called Takako. She's 25 years old, and she has just broken up with this boy who is the literal worst. He's awful, this man. She's falling in a heap. Her life is a disaster, and she decides to throw caution to the wind and move out to this little town in Japan. Her uncle owns a bookshop and she's going to be working in the bookshop with him. She's kind of estranged from him. He's a family member who the rest of the family don't really get on with, not because there's anything wrong with him, but they just think he's like a little bit weird, or like, I don't know, he's just like introverted and very much kind of his own person. But she comes to love him, she comes to understand him, and she really enjoys the environment of working in the bookstore. Despite not being a reader initially, she kind of like finds a love for reading, quiet life, this change to live things more slowly. I definitely preferred the first part of the book. I'd say the first third was like absolutely 5-star feels. We're following, you know, Takako. She travels out to this little town and she is learning to love books, also like meeting locals in the area and things like that. But then we switch to the uncle's story, and it's him kind of reconnecting with this long lost love. His wife mysteriously left him and she just like disappeared one day, and it's about like kind of tracking her down and them like rekindling something perhaps. I don't know, we just kind of like switched tone very dramatically at a point in this book, which I found to be a shame because of how much I'd connected to the first half or the first part. So it was a 5 and then it was a 4.5, and then I kind of looked at it and I was like, actually this is a 4, because realistically I was wanting it to be a 4.5. The majority of the book not being what I truly loved, I felt like I couldn't rate it as highly as that. I didn't really see the point of it. The ending kind of left off on a strange note. I feel like there was definitely something lost in translation, because often there's sentences were like a little bit stilted, or the flow of the story just didn't quite work. And I wonder if, you know, seeing as this is like a bestseller in Japan, it's so well loved over there, I wonder if something went wrong in translation. It's just disappointing when you've signed up what you get on the back, what you get in the blurb, everything like that, and then things change, especially when you really love what the initial thing was. 4 stars to this. Still like a really cute, wholesome read, and definitely one that I was in the mood for, but just not everything I kind of hoped it would be. This is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. Second book in the trilogy, so this is very much like, could be a middle, what's it called? Second book syndrome, that kind of thing, but actually most people think that this is the strongest book in the series. I was so excited for this. I've heard 5-6-star reviews from people. This never felt like a 5. I enjoyed it pretty much the whole way through, but there was never a moment I was like, wow, this is, you know, I'm obsessed, this is great. This was a buddy read with someone. I actually read a lot of this aloud to her, and I thought that was a really special thing to do, and that's something I've never really done before. And it works really well into this because this is very much like a fairy tale style read. I'm not going to tell you the plot in this because first of all, there's not much of one, and second of all, the first book is, you know, it would spoil the first book. But the first book follows this girl called Evangeline. She is very kind of naive and innocent, and she meets this guy called Jax. He's the Prince of Hearts, and she basically kind of prays to him in his temple. He's a fate, so he's like this otherworldly kind of godly figure, and she prays to him because what she believes is her one true love is off to marry someone else. She's heartbroken, she wants to change the situation, requests that the Prince of Hearts intercedes in her life and changes things. He's a trickster. Every single bargain they make has multiple footnotes and lots of fine print and things like that. Gets herself into like a bigger mess than she actually was in to begin with. From that point, we're kind of led on this really winding, meandering journey through this land, this fantasy world, and it's very kind of Alice in Wonderland-esque. It's very magical and fairy tale-esque, but it's also like there's no plot. Nothing's actually really happening here. It's very much one of those books where you're like just here for the vibes. My rating was probably a little bit generous. I gave it 4.5, but it definitely was more of a 4.25. I decided to boost it up because of the fact that the ending was like 5-star worthy. The ending was so good. I think that is truly like what wins this book over for people. It made up for the kind of like slower paced, not so much going on plot that we've been experiencing throughout the majority of the book. Overall, this felt kind of similar to the first book. The first book was a 4-star read for me. This is meant to be Stephanie Garber's best series, but I still prefer the Caraval one, I believe. I gave the final book in that 4.5 stars. That was my highest rating in that series, but that was definitely like a more solid 4.5 than this one. So seeing as I've heard kind of mixed things about book 3 in this series, I am kind of apprehensive as to whether I will give it a high rating or not. But yeah, fun series, definitely YA, definitely something you can like dip into for escapism. Really beautifully constructed worlds, everything like that, and fun characters. That's something I did want to say actually, is that I love Evangeline. I really think she's such a unique character. She's so soft and gentle, but she also like finds this kind of like inner strength in order to put up with her situation. This is a very unpopular opinion to like her. That thing that's like strength is not just like being like an assassin, knowing like martial arts and physical strength, or even like being a bit of a brute, or being like sassy and manipulating people with their words and things like that. Sometimes there is like so much strength within being like gentle and kind and well-meaning, and I feel like Evangeline just like sums up that concept, that like argument that people give. So yeah, recommend this, but not my favorite thing in the world, but like still a really, really fun read, and really, you know, there's some moments in this that were just so beautiful, especially the connection between Jax and Evangeline. There were some moments I was like, wow, so good. Also a book that was gifted to me. This is a birthday gift. Okay, so next up I read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Another book that I wouldn't have picked up this month had my TBR jar not chosen it for me. Difficult read. So we're following these two people, Lauren and Ryan, childhood sweethearts. You know, they met in college and they have been inseparable ever since. They think they're absolutely perfect for each other. They move out to, I think, California, and they get this place together. Everything's going so well. They get married. They're thriving in this relationship. And then 10 years down the line, their marriage is on the brink. So what these two people decided to do, instead of being like, actually, you know what, I want to go and like live my own life, I don't care about you anymore, they decide to do the mature thing and to like really work on what they have. So what they do, this is kind of rogue, but they take a year apart from one another to basically explore other relationships with other people, to work on their own lives, work on their own issues, eventually meet up at the end of that year and decide whether they want to be together or whether they think they should get a divorce. Crazy concept. And I don't think many people would do this, but I thought this was such an interesting exploration of marriage, concept of like falling out of love with someone, but being within this thing where you've like absolutely made like a promise, a huge commitment to stick by someone's side forever. Your fleeting feelings of like, you know, whether you think they're hot are like, you know, kind of not a big deal. Obviously that's like an important thing. Did kind of explore the concept of that being something that you could work on, whether you could like fall back in love with someone, especially with time apart, because you realized what you didn't have, but you hadn't stepped beyond the line of leaving your marriage. This was a thoroughly unenjoyable book. It put me in a really bad place, and it coincided with terrible life events. Like, it actually blows my mind, but I also think this was really interesting because these are two people who really wanted to fight for each other despite like literally hating the guts of the other person. It taught me some lessons, but at the same time, like, oh my gosh, there were some moments that also I just couldn't pick it up because it really dragged me down, and like I said, it kind of like aligned with some other things in my life, and it was just a nightmare. Definitely one I kind of like took my time with, but the ending kind of like, I don't know, it's not like the decision of the characters that made this better, it was the time I kind of spent with it and what I managed to learn from it. I think it's really important that a book like this exists, and I think it's really interesting if you're considering getting married, or you're like in the first couple of years of marriage, or if you're maybe even struggling with your own marriage. It is pretty intense, but it also is very, it's just so real. That's the thing with TJR, is that she writes books where the characters just feel like real people. There's nothing sugarcoating this at all. There's no like, you know, and then they lived happy ever after, because that's just, you know, not a reality of life, and so therefore TJR doesn't make it a reality in her books. I think the important thing with this book is that the characters leave each other to better their marriage. They want something good. They still, you know, deep down are very attached to the person they're married to, but they're also doing things with good intention. They leave each other while they're kind of on the same page. They're both absolutely driven the same by the other, but they're also not ditching what they have. Like, this is our final attempt to make things work. And even during the times that they kind of drift apart across their separation, there's definitely this thing that you feel like they're both aligned. You know, they've gone into this with the same thing in their heads and their hearts. Okay, my camera really rudely cut me off, but it's like, yes, you can fall out of love with someone, but if you're married, there's something more than that tying you together. And, you know, even if you're not married, there is something more than that tying you together. It's not just like a fleeting thing. If you truly care for someone, then you're not going to allow your, you know, annoyance at them, you know, leaving their socks on the floor in the bedroom instead of putting in the laundry basket or whatever it might be, get in the way of the good thing that you have. So there was this kind of hope in this book, but yeah, just a really interesting read, so well written, so thoughtful and so considerate, laying these characters bare, but not in a way where you were there to judge them, but a way where you were kind of like there to go along the journey with them. I thought because this is a backlist TJR and I've only read her like 4 most recent works, that I might not like this. I might find that it was like, you know, different. It is different from them, but you know, she was a good writer from day one. I think that's what I found out with this. Really recommend this. Obviously, like I said, really difficult read, really difficult, but also so important. I think I'm glad this exists. 4 stars to After I Do. Right, then we're gonna get into the books that I read across my 24-hour readathon. Like I said, there were about 3.5. The half was because I was finishing off an audiobook, and that was The Spell Shop by, oh my gosh, what's her name? I blanked on the author. Sarah Beth Durst, I think that's it. She has written fantasy before. This is not a debut. These books, anyway, I want to say that I'm going to be going through them slightly quicker because I did a massive wrap up at the end of my 24-hour readathon video where I broke everything down for you and, you know, telling you my exact thoughts and feelings. So I feel like I'm just going to do like a quick summary and my ratings basically. The Spell Shop follows this girl. She's a librarian. She's lived in the library her entire life in this big capital city, and she lives and breathes books. That's like everything to her. She doesn't care about human interaction whatsoever. She's an orphan. She lives with her sentient spider plant. This is a cozy fantasy book. The vibes are just like really soft and friendly and light and wholesome. But the thing is with this is that, you know, sure, we can go with that for a little while, but it just got so boring. I have read a couple of cozy fantasy books, and it's a common criticism for them to be boring. But I personally never really find that. You know, I don't need high stakes to enjoy a fantasy book, but this one was just like so much of the same. It was really, really long. She moves to this little island and she starts life for herself there, meeting with the locals, you know, engage with life basically for the first time because she's been so caught up in reading and, you know, organising the books in the library and things like that. So cozy, sweet, ultimately quite boring. And I'm really glad I didn't physically read it because I really think I would have DNF'd. Great audiobook, great narrator. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed her kind of performance of this. Beyond that, I was struggling. I was very happy to get this done when I got it done. I love that the main character was a book lover. I often feel like that falls a little bit flat with them books just because, I don't know, is it too meta or something like that? It's just like the things that I feel like authors think we love about books, they get wrong. They're kind of cliche things, which is kind of funny because obviously often if you're a writer, you're a reader too. But I think the big problem with this book is that the world was really undefined. There wasn't any limit to the magic system. There also wasn't any limit to the creatures in this book. There's so many different types of people. There were like little flying cats and things like that. Like there's so much going on. There's like a centaur, this little boy with ram horns. Nothing had any limits. And I feel like that felt kind of lazy on behalf of the author. It felt like a passion project that she just kind of like run with whatever she wanted. And people are happy to get it because they want this like cozy escape. But for me, it just felt a little bit flat, and so I gave that 3 stars. Probably like a 2.75, but three's fine. The rest of these 100% read in the readathon, so I'm going to go through them quite quickly. The Love Wager by Lynn Painter, also another gift. I love Lynn Painter, and the person who gave this to me knew that. But yeah, we're following this girl called Hallie Piper. This is the second book in the Mr. Wrong Number series. I read Mr. Wrong Number, loved that. This book also loved for different reasons, but yeah, we're following Hallie. Hallie is working at the wedding of the characters in Mr. Wrong Number, and Jack is the sister of the main character in Mr. Wrong Number, and he is at the wedding. Obviously he's the best man, and he meets Hallie. They hook up, they have like a one night stand thing, and then they are like go their separate ways because obviously, you know, like it's a one night stand, they don't know each other. They then match on a dating app and they kind of like connect just for like the fun of it, and they're just like, this will obviously never work between us, let's make a wager on who can find love first, who can find like real true love first. They kind of support each other on their dating escapades. They meet up after each day, run through how the date went, what they're feeling, like whether they found the one. They have this kind of banterous fight going on, or competitiveness. Of course, Jack and Hallie fall in love, and that's what the story is about. This was a really, really solid 4-star read. I really liked it. There was nothing I was obsessed with about it. I think I connected with Mr. Wrong Number more. I found that I was really laughing out loud with that one, whereas with this one I was just like, yeah, this is fun, it's light, it's a good time, but I don't really care. But I don't think that really mattered either. I think this was just like one that I was happy to read along. I will also say that any of the books I read across my 24-hour readathon, I'm impressed by, because if they were able to hold my attention when I could do nothing but read, you know, there were many times throughout that day that I was like, please, can I not be reading? Obviously not allowed. So any book that I would suffer through, not because it was bad, but because I didn't want to be reading, full stop, and come out with a good rating, like I feel like is a good book. So maybe on another day I would have rated this higher, but maybe not. It kept my attention, I enjoyed it, it was fun, but not anything life-changing. Not my favourite Lynn Painter, probably my least favourite, the ones I've read by her. Some really soft moments in this, and also some funny ones and things like that. The text exchanges between Hallie and Jack are amazing, so fun. And Lynn Painter's a great writer, so overall, fun time, but just not the best thing in the world. Like I said, if you want more thoughts, head to the 24-hour readathon video. Next up, I read Black Widow, the complete collection. This is by a bunch of people. Mark Waid, Chris Samney and Matthew Wilson. A complete collection of Black Widow comics. She is a superhero. She's one of the Marvel superheroes. Very much a feature of the Avengers, but not so much her own thing throughout the movie franchise. So therefore, like, I really like her character, but I feel like I don't really care about the lore of her character. I don't care about like how she came to be. This was a book that was given to me by my older brother for my birthday a couple of years ago, because my birthday coincided with the release of the Black Widow film with Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh in it. And we watched that. He like paid to, you know, to rent it or whatever, to buy that when it first came out, because it was on that thing where like they don't go to the cinema but they go to streaming services first, but you have to like pay for it. So it was kind of like a fun little gift. You didn't really expect this to be like a hugely impactful read for me. Really fun idea to switch up the format of your books throughout a 24-hour readathon, because I don't know how I would have survived if not. Really loved some of the kind of colour stories in this, the art style, everything like that, and I loved the experience of reading a comic book for the first time. It was something just different for me. The other thing is, you know, like I said, I like Black Widow, I'm not obsessed with her, but I am a little bit obsessed with Iron Man. There were a couple of moments where he was featured in this as well. Overall, a fun read. I didn't know what to rate it, so I didn't rate it just because I haven't read enough comic books. I think it was good. Definitely a nice break within my 24-hour readathon. Swift and Saddled by Lyla Sage. Every so often in my life, once in a blue moon, I come across a romance book that I actually really enjoy, and this was one of them. This was a 4.5 star read. I've never had a 5-star read, never had a 5-star romance book read. Never had a 5-star romance book. Never had a romance book that was a 5-star read, but I've had a few 4.5 star reads. You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry, Flawless by Elsie Silver, and Swift and Saddled by Lyla Sage. Very, very different 4.5s. Enjoyed them for ways that are completely unconnected to each other, despite Flawless also being a cowboy book and this one being a cowboy book. They didn't really overlap in terms of like what I enjoyed about them, but this one just, I don't know, again, maybe the right time I read it. Also another gifted book. But yeah, this one was so much fun, and it's really funny as well because it's the second book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. The first book I gave 3.5, but realistically it was like a 2.5. Moments I genuinely disliked that book. This one being a 4.5, crazy. Usually if I read a book that was like a 2.5, 3, I'd probably stop there if it was the first book in a series. But being the gift of this one, I was like, you know, I'll give it a go, see how it is. If anything, it'll just be like a light, fun read, kind of like a palette cleanser book. But I really thoroughly enjoyed this so much. We're following this girl called Ada. She has broken up with her husband. She's been through some horrible stuff. He was really abusive, and she is called out to Rebel Blue Ranch to work on this guest house that our main dude here, he's called Weston. Yeah, Weston Ryder, truly the worst name to exist, given the context of like what's going on in these books, but whatever. He is opening up a guest house on the ranch, kind of this like little B&B situation, and it's like his first project that he's felt has been just for him. He lives with his family. He doesn't have as big of a personality as his brothers. He also has dealt with some like serious mental health issues. He has a depressive disorder. He's one of those people who from the outside is so bubbly, so happy, so light, so positive, but underneath the surface he's so anxious of slipping back into the depressive state he was in. He's on medication, goes to therapy, things like that. There was always the chance of him kind of going back to his old ways, which would be something that he didn't have any control over. So both these characters have histories, and they come together. She's working on this ranch. I think she's modelling it, designing it. She's an interior designer. But the first night she's in Meadowlark, which is the small town where this is set, she very nearly sleeps with Weston. They make out at a bar, and then she finds out that he's actually her boss for this project, and she's just like so not wanting to have anything to do with him for obvious reasons. She's so embarrassed about what happened, and she really wants this to be like a good step in her career. Weston from the start is like damn bad. He falls first, he falls deeply, and I really, really loved his character. This man had a lot of me in him, and I feel like that's probably where my rating for this book might be slightly higher than some other people's. His loyalty and his love for Ada were not going anywhere, and I feel like at first she found that kind of difficult to grapple with. Panic, like the kind of depth of Wes's love for her. He knew with his mind and with his heart that he loved her. There was nothing changing that. He did allow like the patience for her to figure out like what page she's on, and there was even a point where like, you know, he was like absolutely set on her and she like fled. She literally ran away from him because she couldn't handle the idea of being loved, basically. The surety of his feelings and how much he knew his heart was something that I really related to, and I feel like I've had experience in the past of being like that with people. If it's someone's birthday, then my birthday message is going to be like gushing. People are sometimes like a little bit overwhelmed by that, just because I just like know how I feel. I'm not afraid to express how I feel, and I feel like he was also this way. On top of that, there were just like various things with him that I really loved. One thing was that his brothers are both like very keen on like sleeping around, and he takes longer to fall in love with someone. I just thought there were really interesting depths to this book, but on top of that it was just like a really fun, silly cowboy romance, and I feel like it just worked. So yeah, 4.5 stars for this. Probably no higher than a 4 for most people. Don't love the spice. That kind of took the edge of this. I feel like the makeout scene, almost like one night stand thing, was a little bit unrealistic, or like very unrealistic. But yeah, fiction book, who cares? 4.5 though. Okay, besties, it's 2 o'clock, I haven't eaten, and my camera's dying. So we're going to be rushing through this final book, but I did want to highly, highly recommend it because I really, truly love this, and this was such a gem within the month. I've been reading this on my Kindle, and I actually got it as an ARC from Fitzcarraldo Editions via NetGalley. I loved it so much. They never miss, I swear. Fitzcarraldo is just like, they get everything right, and they have such a good curation and selection of books. What Is Mind by José Henrique Bortoluci is a non-fiction book following a son reconnecting with his father after he's gone, you know, he went in a very different direction in his own life. His father was a trucker throughout Brazil. He drove huge distances across the country, but he never left the country. So a lot of this is about the work he did for Brazil, the change across a really pivotal time, and it was the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. So much of that was about, you know, like these truck drivers driving out to really remote locations and then carrying the wood back, or like bringing goods across the distances for people working in the forest, you know, bringing the supplies from the forest into the cities. We follow a character who history would have otherwise failed to document, but someone who was so integral to the kind of like wealth of Brazil, but also the whole way the country works. The destruction of the rainforest was, you know, it obviously has had, you know, incredible environmental effects, but on top of that, it provided so many jobs, it provided so much for the country. It really boosted the economy of Brazil. These guys who did all the hard labor, you know, to the point where they were sacrificing the time they spent with their family, the time they spent, you know, living lives aside from their jobs to support the country, and then the country overlooking them. This was such a beautiful look into just a normal person's life, extremities of living the trucker lifestyle. You know, he had no concept realistically of like the political like implications of what he was doing, the environmental implications. He didn't understand why, when he had a son, that the son wanted to move to the United States and study and do something so far removed from what he was brought up in. And there's that definite disconnect that you see just about like culturally these two people, despite being father and son, are on such different pages. I was so fascinated by this world. I had zero interest in it whatsoever to begin with. The way that this was written, the way that these facts were just relayed in the most like humble, meager way, just absolutely blew my mind. So impressive, such an impressive book. You know, if this guy ever writes anything more, I'd love to read it. But there was a lot of secrets on the road that were told. There was so much heart in this book, and a lot of the heart came from the fact that we know that Bortoluci's father is dying. He has cancer and it's very far developed. A lot of this conversation is had in hospital, and it really felt like witnessing the final conversations between a father and a son. This kind of like harsh love that the father had for his son. A really impactful, incredible book. I don't know, I don't have enough words to describe this. I really think that it's worth reading, and I think that it can look so dense because it's about like the history of Brazil, it's about a lot of like politics. There are the odd line that do just go over your head, but they often go over your head and then you pause to research that. It opened me up to a whole new area of life, a whole new area of like a way that people live. Got me really fascinated by it, and I just think that's so impressive. I would settle down to read this at night because I love reading on my Kindle in bed, and I'd be like, you know, I'm really tired, I'm literally falling asleep as we go, but this book would just suck me in, and I'd read like, you know, 10-15% in one go when I thought I'd be reading a paragraph. It was told in this way that like the son would list through, you know, the facts and like tell us about his father, and then his father would intercede with this one line telling us about some experience that like aligns with what the son is telling you, but like in his own words and from his own heart. This is all to say I haven't read a Fitzcarraldo edition that I haven't loved, so I'm gonna keep going with them. Thank you so much, Fitzcarraldo. Thank you so much, NetGalley. This was truly an honour to read, and honestly like a little bit life-changing. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I had the best time. I never felt bored. So interesting and so heartbreaking at points, but also like a history lesson, but one that you become really invested in. And I'll be needing a physical copy ASAP, so I'll definitely get around to doing that at some point. But yeah, this book is already out, came out a little while ago, and it's fantastic, so highly recommend if you are interested at all. I feel like there's so many ways that you could be put off this book, but it's great. It's such like a personal documentation of a life that was lived in like such a crazy lifestyle. I don't know. Also gave you tons of recommendations on like other books and films and things like that follow the life of truck drivers. And I definitely want to kind of look into that as well, because I think that whole world is so unlike what most of us live. And yet these guys are just, you know, doing it every single day. It's crazy. So there we go. My tiny little opinion about that book. Being someone who's like completely out of touch with that world, but also someone who has found this like surprise interest in it. I think it's amazing. Anyways, that's it. Those are the 9 books that I read throughout the month of August. A lot of books. I hope I haven't missed any of them. Wow. Yeah, great reading month. So much diversity and so much range throughout that. Honestly, like a pretty highly rated reading month actually, considering how much I got to, and you know, the mix of genres and things like that. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, let me know that you did. Subscribe if you'd like to stick around and see more videos from me. I feel like we're gonna be toning it down a little bit in September. You know, I've had a pretty like significant life change recently, and I'm just like taking a step back on reading and like being more content to like spend a longer time with the book rather than rushing through it, even if I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So September will look a little bit different, but I'm really excited for like all the autumn reading and things like that. Without further ado, I'll leave you in peace because I've been here forever. Yeah, I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope everything is wonderful in your life. I truly mean that actually, and I really hope that you know that brighter days are coming if you're not having the best one today. I'll see you very soon, sometime next week for another video. Bye bye.